And on this video we're going to be reducing fractions and also multiplying fractions. So let's begin with discussing what a fraction, what is a fraction really?
Ratio.
It's a ratio, okay. I'm looking for a word that starts with a D. Division, right? A fraction is really a division problem. If I say 12 over 4, the answer is 3 because 12 divided by 4 is 3. Okay, let's start with the most basic fraction, the most basic division problem. What if I had 4 divided by 4? What's my answer?
1.
My answer is 1. Now, I don't know, in previous math classes they say, oh, the 4 and the 4, they cancel, right? Which is absolutely true. But it doesn't cancel and they disappear. They cancel and it ends up being the answer 1, right? So when you draw a line through it, that's like kind of like drawing a 1 right there. So 4 over 4 is 1. Do we get that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's look at the division problem or the fraction 12 divided by 4. Okay? 12 divided
3.
is, yeah, the answer is 3. Okay? Simple. Now, let's tackle this a slightly different way. I'm going to take this number 12 and I'm going to rewrite it with multiplication as 3 times 4. Okay? And it's still over 4. Now, why the heck would I do this? Normally I wouldn't, because 12 divided by 4 is 3. The answer is 3. But I just want to show you that 12 is really 3 times 4, and we have a 4 over 4 here. And what happens with the 4 over 4?
It goes 1.
It cancels out, becomes 1. So you really have 3 times 1, which is just 3. So there's your answer 3 that everybody said right off the bat, because everybody already knows that 12 divided by 4 is 3. So how about the fraction 4 over 12? Now, the answer is 1/3, right? 4 over 12, the answer is 1/3. Now, normally what we might be used to doing is saying, oh, I'm going to reduce this by 4. And I'm going to reduce this one also, but whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top, or vice versa. So I'm reducing both by 4, and 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. Everybody does that normally, right?
Yes.
On reducing, we divide both top and bottom by a certain value. Now, another way of looking at that is rewriting the 12 as 4 times 3. So let me erase this that we normally do. Reduce top and bottom by 4, divide both top and bottom by 4. And let me rewrite the 12 as 3 times 4. And of course, the 4 is still up there. And then I could just cancel out the 4 with the 4. What is left up on top? Nothing, which means I have to put a 1 up there. And what's left on the bottom? That 3. So that's why the answer 4 over 12 reduces down to 1/3. Now, I know you're thinking, why are we doing this in a weird way? Why don't I just reduce 4 over 12? Why don't I just divide both top and bottom by 4? Because this is going to help us. This is going to help us in the future when we start multiplying fractions. Anyway, let's write down the fraction 2/3 times 4/5. Now, multiplying fractions is honestly easy. Right? It's way easier than adding fractions. Normally, multiplying is more harder than adding, but in this case, multiplying fractions is way easier than adding fractions. Adding fractions is harder compared to multiplying. So how do we multiply fractions? You simply multiply the top number with the top number and the bottom number with the bottom number. And then, of course, you try to reduce. But 8 over 15, you can't reduce by 2. You can't reduce by 3. So you can't reduce it. That's it. That's your answer, 8 over 15. Okay? Now let's take a look at a different example. Let's look at 2/3 times 1/2. Now a lot of us will say, okay, I'm going to multiply the top with the top, and I'll get 2, and then 3 times 2, and I'll get 6, and I get 2/6, right? But 2/6 could be reduced down to 1/3. Now here's another option that you could do. Instead of multiplying right off the bat, top with the top, bottom with the bottom, we could remember that anything on top that's identical that's on the bottom could cancel out to be 1. Like 4 over 4, it reduces down to 1. 3 over 3 reduces down to 1. 2 over 2 reduces down to 1. So right here, instead of multiplying 2 times 1 and 3 times 2, I could do that and then reduce. But what I could also do is recognize that there's a 2 up on top and there's a 2 on the bottom, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. So those cancel out. And now you really have like a 1 right here and a 1 down here because 2 over 2 reduces down to 1. So up on top, 1 times 1 is 1. And on the bottom, 3 times 1 is 3. So we get the answer 1/3. Now obviously you're not going to be showing all this work. You're just going to see it and you're going to do it in your head. All right, it'll be pretty easy. Like if I say, what's 4/5 times 5/7? What's the answer going to be right there?
4/7.
4/7. Nice and simple. I mean, you guys could do this in your head. What's the explanation? Well, if you have a 5 divided by 5, and that's what we do have. We have a 5 up here and divided by 5 on the bottom. Now, what do I mean by 5 divided by 5? If there's a 5 on top and a 5 on the bottom, that's really a division problem. 5 divided by 5 is 1. So 5 cancels with 5. It's kind of like if you had a 1 right here and a 1 right there. And then you just multiply. Oh, 4 times 1 is 4. 1 times 7 is 7. 4/7. Done. Cool. Let's do another similar one. 4/5 times 5/8. Similar to the last one, it's just a little different because not only could you cancel out the 5s, right? We have a 5 here and a 5 there. But we could also look at what's left over. There's a 4 here and an 8 here. That's really 4 over 8. And 4 over 8 reduces down to what? 1/2, right? So, in other words, the 4 and the 8 could both be reduced by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, 8 divided by 4 is 2. So we have a 1 up here, a 1 down there, and then we simply multiply. 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 2 is 2, so we get 1/2. Is that necessary? Is all this work necessary?
No.
Not really. I mean, I could have gone with the original problem, 4/5 times 5/8, and I could have multiplied 4 times 5, we get 20. 5 times 8, we get 40. And then 20 over 40, you reduce it, right? And you could reduce by 10, canceling out the zeros. And 2 over 4 reduces down to 1/2. So it's totally up to you. I just want to show you how you could cancel things out. And that comes in handy when we look at this, this homework assignment. This was on the worksheet where we were doing adding and subtracting on the first 2 columns, thinking of money on the first 2 columns, and then multiplying and dividing on the second 2 columns. So we have some fractions. By the way, if we have, how do we multiply fractions? The top with the top and the bottom with the bottom. Now you might be thinking on number 13, well, that's not a fraction. Could we make it look like a fraction?
Yes, over 1.
Over 1, that's right. So if we put an over 1 right there, now we could multiply, if I wanted to, 15 times 3 and get 45, and 1 times 5 and get 5. And I could go 45 over 5 then get an answer. Or I could say, oh, I have a 15 up here and a 5 down there. That's really a fraction 15 over 5, which is really a division problem, 15 divided by 5. What is 15 divided by 5? It's 3. So in other words, the 15 and the 5 cancel out. Your answer's 3. And where's that 3 left over? Up on top or on the bottom? On top, because the 15 was up on top. So what do I really have here? I really have -3 times 3. Top with the top. -3 times 3, that's -9. That's my answer. Did I have to do that? Absolutely not. Let me rewrite it. Here's 15 times 3/5. Let me put the 15 over a 1. So I could have multiplied at the top with the top, -15 times 3. That's over here, -45. And then 1 times 5, that is 5 over here on the bottom. So now I have the division problem, -45 divided by 5, and of course the answer there is +9. So it's up to you if you want to start canceling things out or reducing things first and then multiplying, or you could multiply first and then reduce. Number 14, I could put the -20 over 1, and I really have 20 up on top, 4 on the bottom. That's like saying 20 divided by 4. What's 20 divided by 4? 5. And where's that 5 left over? On top, right? Because the bigger number 20 was up on top. So I could say the 20 divided by 4, that's going to be a 5 left over. The 4 is just a 1 because there's nothing left. So I really have a -5 on top times -3, because that's all there's left. And -5 times -3, what is that? -5 times -3, what is that? Negative times a negative is a positive, guys. Once again, negative 5 times negative 3, that's positive 15. Negative times a negative equals a positive. So, I hope we see how this is working out. The 24, you can put that over 1, and we could cancel out what? What could we cancel there? The 24 and the 4. What's 24 divided by 4? 6. Where does the 6 belong? On top or on the bottom? Top. So there's a 6 up here on top. It's technically over 1. And what do we have over here? We have negative 5 over 1 because the 4 canceled. So I really have 6 times negative 5. What's 6 times negative 5? Close. 6 times negative 5? Negative 30. Again, 6 times negative 5. The answer is negative 30. If a good thing happens to a bad person, that's bad. So, see, we do have fractions in here, and I hope this video helps you understand them a little better.